Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, episode 49 of the B Graders. We're at Sweet Remedy. It's a beautiful day. We've got a special episode for you today. Matt's going to introduce a special guest a little bit later, but before we do that, Matthew, did you watch Milan-San Remo?
I fell asleep watching Milan-San Remo because they had 100 kilometres to go because cycling is boring to watch sometimes, but I did watch it the next morning when I woke up and have a look at it.
The last 25 Ks of that race is quite possibly the most exciting bicycle racing you will see.
Oh, it is.
Every year, the last 25 K.
They just get far. They hit the suppressor at full speed and then they just get faster and faster and faster.
First 270 Ks. Well, you know, I don't think you're missing anything if you fall asleep watching that. But as Peter Sagan said, our winner, Vincenzo Nibali, was the only one who was prepared to put his balls on the line and attack. And what a magnificent win it was. And like everyone's going on about, nobody picked Nibali. If you're out there and you said, oh no, I picked Nibali, you didn't. Nobody picked Nibali. And why didn't we pick Nibali? Grand Tour winner 3 times, and he's won the Tour of Lombardy that has a very similar finish in the last few years when he's won it as the Milan-San Remo. He went off the front, he only had 10 to 11 seconds is all he ever had going down the Poggio. They closed to 8 seconds. Mitchelton Scott's Matteo Trentin, who's the big signing for this year, he got within 7 seconds of him at the kilometre to go. The bunch caught Trentin and they all propped, they all sat up. Nibali had a couple of Bahrain teammates right near the front. Quickstep couldn't close it down, and it was one of the best victory salutes I think I've ever seen Nibali do. Nibali did not look behind himself till 50 metres to go, where he looked behind, said, I've got this, through the hands. The tears were already flowing, and it was one of the best wins I've seen in a long time. And of course, everyone cried 1,000 cries in Australia, not even a flick of the fingers later, as Caleb coasted past all the other sprinters and ran second. It doesn't upset me because great ride by Caleb, but you know, he didn't do enough to win, and I really appreciated that win. Arnaud Demar, the man accused of holding on to the car a couple of years ago, he's come in third. Great ride by him. He's been on great form. But unfortunately in this race, there's been a few injuries. It's a hell of a crash. And you've seen the Cavendish crash. Oh, my goodness. Go to YouTube, have a look at the Cavendish crash. You will think he was trying to be Superman. Terrible to see. Yet only cracked a rib. Cracked a rib. Well, all right, he's cracked a rib. He already had 3 cracked ones, so a fourth's not going to hurt too much more. Andre Greipel broke a collarbone descending the Poggio. Very unfortunate. And Simon Clark. Simon Clark got knocked off by his teammate. 3 or 4 broken vertebrae. Yeah, not real good, not real good. But that is the way of Milan-San Remo. It was like 250 kilometres of in absolute rain the whole time, and then it finally dried out. About 50k from the finish. Yeah, it was an uncomfortable day out. But Nibali, that was one of what we talk about being like one of the old school style wins. A superb win, and something to look forward to for Caleb. He now moves into the realm of the Alan Davises and the Heinrich Hauses of Australian cycling, who have run second. And of course, we've still got Simon Gerrans and Matty Goss, who have won it for Australia. Definitely a chance to win it in the future. Around Perth last weekend, we had the Ring won by Jackson Morby. Everyone else must have fallen off. He's taller in that new kit. It's Glenn Parker Cycles. And the Natalie Britz won the women's race. It was a very, very good win. I saw the video of the sprint, and she left them behind. What is it with the old birds? And yes, you're 40, you're an old bird, Nat. I wouldn't say old bird. And last year we had Mel Robinson, another old bird. They seem to be faster than the young riders. I think so much faster. Like they do. And women come into their own a lot later. It seems empirical evidence would say that they can go a lot longer. Britz, like I'm taking the mickey about the age thing, but Nat Britz is fast. Oh yeah, she's real fast. Really fast. Yes, I wouldn't. You know? She would chick me every day in the week in a sprint. There's no doubt. She wouldn't chick me, but at the moment she would. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to get to the finish with her. That's the only problem. Yeah. And after the other race we had on the weekend was the Masters Age Champs up at Wangara. Good turnout. We had great turnout. Now I tell you what, we did see. We saw the return of the king. Wade Keeser? No, not quite. Still Bishop. Still Bishop had a win. Yes, he's turned up. He's raced. He's won. He raced and he won. And he won. You know, there's a good photo of Steele that you'll see of him coasting across the line. I was there about 40 metres from the line. It was Bishop of old. Looked across the road at the field and just looked over his shoulder and said, well, is that your best you're going to do?
But
didn't throw his hands and get because he would have got disqualified.
He would have. Richard Barville, the World Grand Fondo Road champion in the 75 plus category, was also in that field. He took out the 75 plus category. Well done to Richard. It was a lovely gesture seeing both Steele and Richard have a photo together after the race. Richard in his World Champions jersey and Steele in a lovely jersey that his sponsor TBE and also Cannondale have put together for him with the rainbow bands. Of course, he won the rainbow bands on the track. But as I said to the West Coast Masters boys at the weekend, I think anyone who's got a world title, and I'm not saying that for any other reason, anyone who's got a world title who's a member of the West Coast Masters, you should just be encouraging them. Fran Watson, Hilton McMurdo, Steele Bishop, Richard Barville, anyone who's won one. I'm trying to think who else. Rebecca Whedon, I'm not sure, has raced out there before, but encourage all your world champions to
I've always said
bands.
If I won a world title, which is highly unlikely, if I won a world title, I would get it tattooed probably in a very inappropriate place.
It's funny you say that because back in 2007, several of us thought about doing the same thing, and I'm really glad that we didn't because we look bloody stupid. It's old men with these dreary Pamela Anderson style tattoos.
Yes, that seems like a good idea at the time.
Wade Keeser, classy ride, won the young blokes title.
From a sprint in a good group.
Brian Singh and Greg Rossiter. Sorry, Greg Rossiter was in the third. Johnny Gregg put Doug Stewart and Andy Brearley away. Special mention to John Lisso, who ran fourth. This is a guy who started off in D grade and has just made his way through and ran fourth in a very, very classy field. Beat some very good bike riders. This bloke was off the front with 2 to go, and he would have won it. He and Colin Rose are off the front, but Magnus Rudisell chased him down.
I'd have to say it was a very hard race. So there was no easy race. And Magnus, give me those tyres back.
Yeah, give the tyres back. Keithy Winch won the 55 plus. Merv Byfield, our mate and a sponsor, Sfila, almost won it. Had about 30. It was just 30 metres too far, and the women supported it beautifully. Well done to Andrea Hind, Kerry Fennell, Kylie Andersich, and
Corey Fillmore.
And of course, got to mention Sam Bolton. She got the silver medal behind Kerry.
And Kerry, you got to mention, she raced. Hubby to be didn't, stayed at home, watch telly, weekdays.
Because he was out.
Anyway, on that note, we're going to Matt1 at IINet if you give us feedback. We want your feedback, more feedback about women's racing. I've got some this week, passed it on to the authorities that need it. We're going to be back in a second.
I've got a very special guest coming up.
See ya.
Now, a few shows ago, you'll remember that I did the show with Rebecca Mackey. It was a great show, had lots of fun, but one thing did happen after we put that show to air. Within minutes of us putting it to air, a gentleman got in contact to talk about the show and the topics we discussed that day. That gentleman happened to be the CEO of WestCycle, Mr. Matt Fulton. Welcome to the B Graders.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you here. Now, we found out something straight away that day after doing the show with Rebecca, that some people do watch us, but when the man in the #1 job in cycling in Western Australia rings you up straight away, we're obviously doing something right or something wrong. So, I want to know, WestCycle, what is it? What does it do?
Sure. So WestCycle is the peak cycling body in WA. We were established back in 2011 after the state government basically did an assessment on cycling, and there were some issues at the time, which I'm sure a lot of people know about. There's a lot of conflict in between different organisations that was really hampering the future growth of cycling and the future direction. So WestCycle was formed off the back of that report. So we act as that peak body in cycling. We've got 37 different member organisations, so we don't have individual people as members. You can't, as an individual, be a member of WestCycle. Right. We have all the different organisations, so Bicycling Western Australia, West Coast Masters, Cycle Sport WA, Perth Integrated Health, BMX, WAMBA, etc. So our primary role in that capacity is to work with those organisations for the interests of cycling in its entirety. We support those members. Some of them we give grants to on an annual basis to help them do what they do and promote their activity. So it's a diverse area that we work in, from advocacy through to getting more kids on bikes and generally working with multiple stakeholders such as the state government to promote cycling.
So the WestCycle office is over in Wembley, and you've got a number of staff. What roles are there within WestCycle, and what do the staff members do for WestCycle?
Yeah, so we're West Leederville, very close to Wembley.
Okay.
We've got a team of 9, and that ranges from, we've got an events activation specialist in Glenn Taraki, who a lot of people will be familiar with. We've got marketing, so there's a couple of people within what we'd call our marketing team, Cameron Wong and Francis over there, doing a lot of the social media and the strategy stuff that you see going on there. Peter's our mountain bike manager, so she's obviously working with WAMBA and the mountain bike community to progress mountain biking. We've then got Joe McCarthy, who's high performance, so he's working across both mountain biking and road and track cycling on high performance.
What does the high performance position do?
Yep.
As part of WestCycle? What's the role?
So our definition of high performance is we've got a role to make sure that there's a talent pathway for people coming through the system. Yep. We get athletes to a point that WASTE then has a pool of athletes to select from, essentially. Right. So our remit is get more people into that system, get better people out of it for WASTE to select and then go through, hopefully, to compete at an international level.
So is that more like the old junior development side of things, or is it also senior riders?
Yeah, it's definitely focused on that junior end. The sort of the 13 to 17-year-old is probably the key catchment area for that role. But certainly Joe's providing support services to state teams at all different levels. So not only is he the overseer of that strategy, he's also organising the state team trips and travelling with teams, etc., as a team manager.
Right. So that's WestCycle, but you're also the CEO of Cycle Sport Western Australia. So Cycle Sport Western Australia, it's still run the same way it always has. We still don't have any employees necessarily for Cycle Sport Western Australia?
Yeah, that's right. So Cycle Sport WA is one of the member organisations of WestCycle. So as I said, we've got 37 of those. There's a service agreement that exists between Cycle Sport WA and WestCycle to basically say that WestCycle has a responsibility of running that entity under the guidance of a separated board. So there's still a board of Cycle Sport WA, there's still a constitution and the governance principles that sit underneath that. But WestCycle employs the staff, runs the balance sheet, and manages all the budgets, etc. So it's a standalone entity, separate to WestCycle, but to a certain degree it's one and the same because I change hats between the different roles. Glenn Taraki and the team is employed by WestCycle, but he's obviously delivering majority cycle sport events in his role. Mm-hmm. So it is a complex structure. It's hard to articulate to people and to get that across that they are two separate entities, but at the same time we're all working together. And I suppose that's one of the key remits of WestCycle is to look for these efficiencies in the cycling system and go, well, how do we strip some costs out? There's no point in cycle sport employing a CEO 2 days a week and WestCycle employing someone 3 days a week. Let's just have one person in that role who can be available 5 days a week and manage both organisations.
So from a racing perspective, we're in 2018. We've got the last round of the Ring Series coming up this weekend in Leederville. Clashes with the Australian Formula One Grand Prix and also the first round of AFL, but who's counting? What have we got to look forward to in 2018 from a racing perspective?
Yes, as you said, we've got the finale this weekend down in Leederville for the Ring Series. We've had a really successful series. I've had over 1,500 people enter the 9 events to date and obviously the one on the weekend. There's some really good opportunities in there that I want us to start talking about and promoting more and more moving forward. And I think Little Critters is a really good property that we've got to get young kids into the sport at an early age in a really fun environment and then hopefully see them progress. So there's Little Critters. We've got a new racer program in there as well, trying to encourage people to get into racing. And this weekend is set to be a fantastic weekend. Last year, we had 5,000 people in Leederville come and watch the race. That was the biggest weekend that the city of Leederville actually have had when they've done a closed roads event. So huge success. We're looking forward to doing that one again. Remainder of the year, the Element will be back. So we're looking at a 10-race series this year. We're just putting the final touches on that at the moment before going out with what that looks like. There's some new events in the metro area that we're working on, as well as some regional ones. In September, we've got the National Junior Road Championships, which is the first time in, I don't know how long, Matt, since we've had a national championship.
I was asked this by Kip Kaufman, the Cycling Australia Sport Manager, last week before when he was about to do the release. Now, the last National Road Championship that I could think of was when John O'Hall won it. which would have been around 98, 99, somewhere around there. So it's a long time since we've had a road championship.
Almost 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my only thing, and most controversial thing I'll say in this whole interview, not in Perth, not in the metro area. We've had to go 200 plus K out of Perth to be able to hold it.
Yes.
Why is that?
So we looked at a number of different options. We looked within the metro area, we looked at York, we looked at obviously down in Bunbury and a few others in between. Numerous factors for that. The City of Bunbury have been very supportive, both financially but also in their spirit behind the event and wanting to get right behind it. Mm-hmm. Some of the courses that we're looking at the moment will be absolutely spectacular and really showcase the best of what WA has to offer when it comes to this type of event. So things like traffic management in the CBD metro area, as you would know,
yes.
really challenging to put on an event, really challenging. Go down to somewhere like Bunbury, when you've got the city right behind you, bending over backwards to help close roads, will enable us to have a fantastic event that will hopefully remain in the memories for people for a long time to come, and also set WA a new benchmark for these type of events. So we can go back to Cycling Australia and say, hey, we now want to hold another event and continually put these national events on the WA calendar. So Bunbury was a choice that we ended up landing on, working with Cycling Australia and obviously the City of Bunbury.
Now we could go on and talk about all sorts of things cycling. I really wanted to keep this on a real positive note because there's so many positive things happening for the sport this year. Mate, I'm going to leave it there. I was happy to have you on the show. I know you're a very busy man. You've got to shoot off to another appointment today. But thank you for coming on the show. And I'd love to get you on the show again and talk about possibly next summer and possibly the track scene in Western Australia and see what we can do about that.
Fantastic. We'd love to.
All right, mate.
Anytime.
Good on you. Folks, that's all from us this week. matt1@iinet.net.au. If you want to send us an email, or maybe you have a question for Matt Fulton and you want to send it through to him and we'll pass it on. Thanks very much.